Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aaron Blade, and I'm the editor, creator, and producer of what you're watching right now, Blade Talk. If you are new here, welcome, and you found this presentation helpful and informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I always appreciate all the support that I am given. And speaking of support, thank you to all of you that sent me a comment saying happy birthday, those that sent me a nice email saying happy birthday. I do appreciate it, and I did have a fantastic birthday. It's good to be back here in front of you all, about to answer some questions because it is that time again, all right? So you already know the deal. Let's get to it. All right, so I'm another year older. Feel that in my knees, right? So let's not waste any time. Let's get into some questions, shall we? First question. Hey Blade, I know this is probably a dumb question, but I'm a big fan of the channel and I'm very curious. What is a Zionist? What is Zionism? All right, so the first things first, there are no dumb questions on this channel, okay? You can ask whatever you like and I will answer it to the best of my ability. So, Reform Judaism and Zionism essentially started around the same time, okay? In the late 1800s, the Jewish people were facing essentially a crisis, right? That crisis was known as anti-Semitism, okay? It was a term that essentially was used in the 1870s, but the concept has been around for thousands of years, okay? There was a serious concern that Judaism would essentially disappear, okay? The question on many individuals' minds were, how will we survive? There are many different solutions to this, but ultimately, two major solutions. The first was the Reform Judaism's approach, which was to integrate fully into the society that they were living in, right? The second was the point of view of the Zionists, in which they had a desire to form their own country, okay? Obviously, the reform movement started in Europe, but became dominant in the United States of America. They felt that, the Jews were home here in America, right? That this was the promised land, okay? So they wanted to fit in. They came up with a way of being Jewish that that could be practiced while still being involved in the country that they lived in, okay? They essentially abandoned a lot of the laws and the rituals, etc., so that they can essentially fit in, right? As a matter of fact, the Pittsburgh platform stated itself that the reform movement neither seeks a return to Palestine, Israel, nor the restoration of any of the laws concerning the Jewish state. Okay, so essentially this was a strong rejection of Zionism. Okay, now the Zionists believed that they had a desire for the Jews to re-enter the world stage. Okay, Theodore Herzl was one of the leaders that backed this movement. He wasn't really religious, but he seen the growing anti-Semitism and decided that we needed a place to call home for all Jews, right? He rejected the reform approach that we should integrate because he felt that we would never be fully equals with natural born citizens in whatever country that we lived in, right? So he desired a place to essentially call home, right? And then in the 1930s, the Reformed Jews began to change their attitudes as tensions and anti-Semitism rose in Europe, right? They came to the realization that their decision to integrate was not exactly going to work for everyone, right? So 50 years after the Pittsburgh platform, Reformed Judaism's platform essentially changed, right? It now stated that Judaism is the soul to which Israel is the body. Okay, we affirm the obligation to aid in its upbuilding as a Jewish homeland. Many Jews in America have no idea what it means to be Jewish in Israel, right? There are parts of Jewish life that can only come from living in a Jewish country, right? Many aren't observant actually in Israel, but they are submerged in Jewish values and culture and heritage by default, right? Similarly, Israeli Jews have no idea what it's like to be Jewish outside of Israel, right? They can't imagine a religious life totally separated from the state, right? That doesn't involve, politics and whatnot, So it's interesting to see the to compare Israeli Jews and American Jews and Jews in London, etc., etc. We all have our different backgrounds and ways of being Jewish, but I find it beautiful. Okay, and so that's essentially what a Zionist is: the desire that Jews deserve a home, right? And of course, me personally, I consider myself a Zionist. Absolutely. I do believe that Jews have a right to have a home, have a place that they can call home, right? Hope that answers the question. Next question. Hey Blade, big fan of the channel. Just had a quick question. What is your take on interfaith dating? So, I don't support interfaith dating, right? But I respect everyone and their decision to do so. Okay. I am a conservative Jew. However, I do see myself as more traditional, right? I think that the future of our culture and heritage must be preserved through our children, right? There is no halakhic reason for it, and I typically discourage it personally, right? There are some Jews that like to say, well, love is love and we are all worshiping the same God, and, to which I disagree, okay? Hence why I don't support it. It states in the Torah that we are not to marry non-Jews, okay? I understand it is a touchy subject for some, but I won't compromise what the Torah states. I also believe that Muslims should marry other Muslims, Christians should marry other Christians. It is better for the children that they learn the same morals and values that are agreed upon by the parents, honestly. Even if there are no kids or the kids are grown and out the house, I still believe in being unified mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, right? I think that that's the key to a successful relationship, a successful marriage. It takes more than love. I know that's not a popular opinion, but it takes more than love to sustain a healthy relationship. And I do believe that, praying together, being able to celebrate holidays together, etc., etc. I personally don't believe that Jews, Christians, Muslims all worship the same God. I don't. Because the only thing that, the only way we know that the God we're worshiping is the same is to find out what that God essentially expects from us. So you have the God of Israel, which expects us to, as Jews, be a light unto the nations, to abide by the Torah and teach the Torah and teach other people the Torah and whatnot. And then you have the Christian idea of God, which is to believe in Jesus Christ and to spread that message, right? And then you have, of course, Allah, the Muslim deity that says to his followers to spread the Quran and teach that Muhammad is the last and final messenger, etc., etc. So how can one God be sending multiple people in different directions that are vastly different from the other? Of course, Jews, as we believe that the Torah is the word of God, and we follow the laws according to what God essentially stated. And then you have Christianity that says that the law is done away with. Well, the God that the Jews believe in, that we believe in, would never do such a thing. Would never say that the Torah is obsolete and the Torah is done away with, etc., etc. Nowhere does it state that. It states that, on the contrary, in the Torah, that this law is to be followed throughout your generations. It is forever, right? As long as you live. And so now you have this God that's saying that the Torah is a curse and it's done away with. And then, of course, you ask the Muslims about their God, and they say that, the Torah has been corrupted. And, for me, that can't be the same God, right? The expectations of how we get close to said God is different. One, we get close to God and build a relationship by adhering to his laws, his ordinances, and, spreading Torah. You have another that says that the way to get close to God is through his one and only Son, right? And then you have another that says that, well, the old laws are corrupted and don't go through the Son to get to me, because the Son isn't a deity, and actually to get to me, get closer to me, you need Muhammad. You need to accept Muhammad and this new revelation. Jews don't believe in progressive revelation. So a lot of the things don't really combine, right? I see people that essentially try, they'll have a menorah in the window and a Christmas tree in the household and whatnot. And again, I'm happy for anyone to do whatever they like, but I just don't support that. I don't encourage that. I'm not going to, sit here and go against the Torah on this channel. Me, myself, being a Jew, I'm not going to go against it. And it says very clearly in Jeremiah that we are not to worship God the way other people worship their God. We're not to imitate the way that other people, worship holidays and whatnot. And Jeremiah explicitly states we shouldn't chop down a tree and decorate it with gold and silver, etc., which is what Christians do. So I think that there should be a fine line between who we are, preserving our culture, our heritage. And yes, I think that Jews should marry other Jews, Christians other Christians, Muslims other Muslims, etc., etc. I think it's better for the children, and even if you don't have children, it's better to actually establish a successful relationship. Right? Not to say that, if you have an interfaith marriage, it won't work. I'm saying that I think that the Torah is clear, and I do believe that you should be on the same page when it comes to God, right? I think that you should be on the same level, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. A lot of people forget the spiritually, and then they wonder why they have so many struggles in their marriage or their relationship or what have you, right? So it just depends on how seriously, again, your observance level is and whatever religion you follow. I can't see a religious devout Muslim, marrying a religious, serious, devout Catholic, for example. Eventually there's going to be some clashes, right? So that's my personal opinion on interfaith dating. Next question. Hey Blade, just got done watching your previous video about the Hebrew Israelites, that it doesn't matter whether they are the original people or not. Do you think this comes from a thought of superiority? Absolutely. If you were to see the emails, the comments that I get from people who are part of this group, it would be disheartening, right? All they do is spew insults, but not one has addressed essentially the claims that I made, right? As I stated, while I'm on this platform, I don't want to hear, you're stupid or you shouldn't teach or you don't know what you're talking about, etc., right? Attack the points I made or go sit down. Okay? Like, I stated the Hebrew Israelites are a cult, and I stand by that. They are practicing past theory. And how I described it, a charismatic cult leader, a group of leaders, comes to a group of people and essentially makes up an entire history. They're trying to convince Hispanics, Native Americans, African Americans that we are all from the original, we're all the original people from the tribe of Israel, right? Why have they never been told that themselves in their own traditions? Why don't Hispanics already know that they're part of the 12 tribes of Israel? Why don't the Native Americans already know, right? That means that they are supposed to trust the Hebrew Israelites over their own grandparents, great grandparents that told them essentially who they are in their history, right? So it's the irony for me. Right? Why is it ironic? Because when white people brought Africans to America to be slaves, right? They took away their language, their heritage, their culture, their identity, etc. We all know the unfortunate history of what took place in this country, right? And white people, some, made the Africans conform to their ways, their belief systems, their language, etc., right? So they essentially used the Bible as a weapon to establish superiority. Obviously, they, took many things out of context, right? And my grandfather always used to say, son, if you're not careful, you will become the very thing that you hate. Right? So, what are the Hebrew Israelites doing now? You guessed it, right? Using the Bible as a weapon to claim racial superiority the same way that white people did. If you're not careful, you will turn into the very people that you hate the most, right? They claim that they're strictly using scripture, but again, nowhere in the Bible does it ever says of African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans are the original people from the original 12 tribes and whatnot. Nowhere. It doesn't say it anywhere. Okay? They rely on an interpretation of a man that had a vision. And his Hebrew Israelites typically won't even mention their founder. Right? Frank Cherry. Go look him up. William Crowdy. Go look him up. Right? They think that they are all knowing of the scriptures, but again, they don't have an explanation to what they're reading. Right? And so there are people that will say that, well, I've seen some, if you were to debate, this person, that person, and anytime someone says that, I find that that's a very weak tactic. Okay. I've seen it not just with Hebrew Israelites, but Christians. But, well, if you were to talk to my pastor, if you were to talk to my imam, if you were to talk to such and such, right? The question is why don't you know? Why don't you know? Why do I have to talk to your leader? That's cult behavior. So for me, and again, I always am skeptical about people who say, well, you just need to pray and whatnot, and Jesus will show you X, Y, and Z. No, I'm not doing that. Because if we all were just supposed to pray, then there will be no need for a Bible. Right? And then Hebrew Israelites claim that, well, you got to learn and you got to do this. I tell you what, I'm Jewish. Okay? I went to Jewish day school. Jewish day school, I learned Hebrew. Okay? Learned how to read the Torah in its original language. I read Chumash by Rashi, right? I've read the Mishnah Torah by the Rambam. I have read some of the Gemara. I minored in theology at UT Martin, and not one shred of literature have I seen that there's anything about race mattering to God. But I'll do what you're saying, and I'll keep learning. As I continue to say on this channel, I am a brilliant person because I know I'm not. I surround myself with brilliant individuals and I learn from them. I'm a thief. I'm a thief of knowledge, and I come on this platform and give it to you. Okay? But the idea that you're going to claim that we follow scripture, we don't follow the philosophy of man, and we're just scripture alone, that's stupid. Because the Torah itself, the laws that we're supposed to follow, it can't be all based on scripture because it's too vague. The Karaites did it and tried to do it and dismissed the oral tradition, and they had to come up with their own oral tradition, right? Because without the oral tradition, you're lost. Again, how do you get married? How do you get divorced? How do you convert to Judaism? You tell me in scripture how it's done. And we know that there is a such thing. We know that it exists. We know that marriage exists. How do you do it? You don't know that just from scripture alone. And so they don't know, so they resort to coming to me and insulting. You need to learn more, and you need to debate this person, and you need to talk to this person. You don't have the knowledge to attack the arguments or the claims that I made. So you want to sit here and have me go to your leader? Or you want to sit here and make personal attacks on me? I will say this. It is the power of the message, not the image of the messenger. You remember that. Moving on. Hey Blade, do you believe this is the scariest point in your lifetime to be a Jew? What does it mean when people chant, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free"? Absolutely. If you are Jewish, please be safe, right? I am praying for all Jews that they are safe from harm every Shabbat. Every Shabbat, I am praying. This is the most devastating attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and this attack has really shined a light on the fact that anti-Semitism is real. Okay, from the river to the sea is an anti-Semitic term, right? Free Palestine isn't anti-Semitic, but when you chant "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," you're basically calling for the destruction of Israel. Okay? They mean from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And what is in between those two bodies of water? You guessed it. It's Israel. All right? Again, it is important to note that there is only one Jewish state. Okay? All the Arab states in the surrounding areas have essentially turned their backs on those very Palestinians, right? Egypt's prime minister literally stated that we are prepared to allow millions to die. We're not helping anyone. That should send volumes on the kind of terrorist organization that Hamas is, right? This is your own people. These are your own fellow Palestinians. They're your own fellow Arabs. And they are literally claiming, because Egypt is south of Gaza, they share a border. They are literally saying that we are prepared to let millions die. They won't open that border at all, right? And everyone is trying to call for a ceasefire that only benefits Hamas, right? Everyone is trying to charge Israel with war crimes. And it's funny because those same individuals won't speak on Hamas that are actually committing war crimes, right? Using civilians as shields, that's a war crime, right? Telling them not to go south, because if they get killed, it's good media coverage. It's a war crime, right? So, Hamas doesn't care about, the Palestinians at all. So people sit here and they shout, free Palestine, free Palestine. And I respond with, from Hamas. We're working on it. Thank you for your support. All right? We're working on it. There were millions of Palestinians being killed in Yemen, and you didn't see that many protests, right? You have Egypt closing their doors to the Palestinians, but you don't hear many protests about that. It's only when Israel does something or responds to something that everyone is up in arms. Now, all of a sudden, the innocent Palestinians. Okay. Again, my theory of this entire conflict is that this was generated by Iran in order to halt the Saudi peace process. Honestly, that process has been working well. The Abrahamic Accords that are in place are essentially holding up. Right, the head of the Foreign Affairs and the Defense Department in the UAE stated that the Parliament stated that the Abrahamic Accords are here to stay. We want to acknowledge that Israel is there to exist, right? And that's a big move. Iran was afraid that Saudi, Egyptian, Jordanian, and the UAE alliance would create a major counterbalance and essentially box Iran in. So, Iran struck out using Hamas, right? Which is its proxies. Can't fight the battle its own. It'll get completely wiped out, and they know it. So they send little proxy groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Kufis. They'll send these little proxy groups and whatnot to do their bidding. They just didn't think that Hamas would be as successful as they were in what they committed on October 7th. Right? So, they didn't expect that the world would back Israel like it has. So, again, Hamas needs to go. Right? And from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's an anti-Semitic term. That is stating that Israel shouldn't exist. They want to annihilate all the Jews. And for people that are charging Israel with war crimes, Israel has the air force that could level Gaza and kill 2 million people in an afternoon. And what they are doing instead is telling people to move out the way as the military comes in and destroys Hamas's. And the bottom line is Hamas has to go. And that's just from a common sense perspective. If you have a neighbor that breaks into your house and does awful things to your family, would you want to live next to that neighbor? No. And for everybody, there needs to be a ceasefire. And what about those hostages? We ain't gonna mention that? So you want us to stop while those hostages are still lost? That only benefits Hamas. I'll give you this much. If Israel lays down their guns, there will be another Holocaust. If Hamas lays down their guns, then we have peace. I'll leave it at that. Last question. Hey Blade, I am facing a dilemma that some of my friends don't respect my new Jewish identity. I recently converted through the Reform movement and I find myself having to choose between my faith and my friends. What do you suggest? So, this is why I always try to get people to understand that when you convert to Judaism, it is a lifestyle change that won't just affect you, but the people that are around you. Okay, my advice is to get away from them. That sounds harsh. Get away from them. If they can't accept you for who you are, get away from them. I've always stated that the hardest place to flourish is in the place you grew up around the people that you grew up with. They know too much. They remember too much. They've seen too much. Right? You know, my birthday just passed. I had extended family reach out to me, um, wish me happy birthday, and then they want to reminisce on how things were when I was younger, right? And I appreciate them reaching out, thinking of me, but I absolutely hate being reminded of who I used to be. Right? Hey, happy birthday, Blade. You remember when you were young and used to play with my vacuum cleaner? It's 30 years ago. You remember when I used to babysit you? No, I don't. I always have respect for people that want to get to know me at this stage in my life. I'm not that same person, right? And so as I build relationships, friendships, what have you, I make sure that they know who I am now. And I think parents struggle with this the most. They still see, their baby boy or their baby girl, and they can't fully get to know them as an adult and understand who they are now because they're still stuck on when they changed your diaper, when you were a baby. Get to know people for who they are at the current stage in their life that they are essentially in, right? Get to know them for who they are now. Because people grow. I have no interest in reliving my past. I don't live there anymore. Get to know me. And there are some that'll, hey, what are you doing now? I value those questions. What are you doing? What are you up to now? What are your interests now? What are you doing now that you're out of the military? Those questions mean more to me than you remember when we were kids and we were shoplifted a Snickers bar around the store and at the corner store. No. Why can't you get to know me for who I am today? And my advice is to get away from people that don't have the ability to know who you are now, to know who you are today, because you're not that same person. And the people that are around you have to understand that you're not the same person that you were before you entered the mikveh. You're not that same person. You came out of the mikveh a completely different person. Get away from people in your life that's hating. Get away from people in your life that can't accept you for who you are. Get away from them. I don't care how much it hurts, get away from them. I had to do it. So, if you found this presentation helpful, informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. Be good to yourselves. Be good to others. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Thank you for everything. It really means a lot to me. Again, be safe to all the Jews watching this. Be safe out there. I'm praying for every Jew, every Shabbat. that they just get home safely. Right? That being said, thank you all so much. Again, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and I'll catch you on the next one. You all take care.